Hi everybody, and welcome to NorCal Slot Car Scene. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video on brushed versus brushless motors. Today we're going to look at a kit from Velocity Racing that makes the conversion from brushed to brushless pretty easy. The kit includes a DOE-slot brushless motor along with the ECOM and a 3D printed motor can that the brushless motor is inserted into to form a motor assembly. They make two different kits, one for a short can motor and one for a long can motor. Once assembled, you can install this into most any application that takes the standard short can or long can motor. First, let's take a look at the motor that comes in the kit. It's from DOE-slot and it's rated at 2000 kV. We're going to compare this with the Predator motor that I have in my Can-Am car. It's rated at 25,000 RPM. The DOE-slot is 2000 kV, and the formula for determining RPMs is the kV rating times the voltage. When you do the math, the DOE-slot motor is approximately 24,000 RPMs, so it should be a good comparison.
Let's take a look at the weight of the brushed motor, the NSR motor in this case, and a DOE-slot brushless motor with the velocity system on it. So first we're going to turn our scale on and zero it out. We're using a piece of foam on the scale so the magnets in the motors don't affect our readings. So let's take our 20K NSR motor, put it on the scale, and we're at 22.2. If you saw my video on motors, if you go to a long can motor, they're about 30 grams. So this is a fairly light motor for a 32nd scale car, not taking into account the 050 slim can motors. Let's go for the DOE-slot with the velocity can. 8.6 grams. Now obviously that's not a fair weight because we have to add in the ECOM. We'll put that on the scale along with the motor. And now we're at a whopping 11.7 grams, half the weight of the NSR motor.
Now let's assemble the kit. The kit consists of the main motor can, the end bell assembly, and the black motor plate, along with the various hardware. Here's the basic general assembly. First, snap the motor plate into the can. Make sure you mount the plate with the recesses for the screws towards the outside.
The next step is to install the motor in the can. Simply run the lead wires out the window on the side of the can. The motor shaft goes out through the plate. Next, we're going to install the end bell and make sure you have the orientation correct. The end bell simply stamps in place. Now our motor assembly is ready to install.
Velocity's done a comprehensive how-to video on the installation, and I'll put the link in the upper right. To bolt the motor into the assembly, you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver and a 40 thousandths Allen wrench. First, attach the motor to the plate using the 4 Phillips head screws. Once this is done, make sure the motor turns over properly, and we're ready to install the motor in the motor pod. Now that our assembly is complete, you can insert the motor just like you normally would into any motor pod. Next, I test fitted the motor to the pod using the 2 supplied screws. I found on this Thunderslot pod that the screws were a bit long and rubbing on the motor, so I had to add a couple of washers to make sure the motor spins freely. Once this was done, it was time to pull the motor out and install the gear. One minor issue is the installation of the gear. Most gear presses are not long enough to reach inside to the brushless motor. What you need to do is find a spacer that allows your gear press to work. I used an arbor from another press and it worked just fine. Now we're ready to actually install the motor in the pod and bolt it in place. One thing to check for is where the wires come out of the can. Velocity has cut it so it shouldn't interfere. When I do the final installation, I'm going to put a piece of electrical tape here so those wires can't be damaged rubbing against the can. I'm installing this in a Thunderslot car I've used previously. To make room for the board, I'm going to remove the lead that I've used previously and cut off this mounting bracket so I have a flat surface to mount the board to. Here's the test fit of the board. I'm mounting it at a slight angle because it fits a little bit better on the motor pod. Now all I have to do is complete the wiring and head to the test track. There are a couple issues that we need to talk about. First is motor rotation. You can't simply reverse the lead wires like you do in a brushed motor. Because of this, the motor will not go in the correct rotation if you're using an NSR car that has the gear on the passenger side of the chassis. There is a way to reverse the rotation of a brushless motor, but it involves unsoldering from the board, and that's not something that I want to do at this time. The second issue is controllers. If you have a controller that uses pulse width modulation, it may not work with a brushless motor. The true speed controllers fit in this category. A lot of people use third eye controllers that use pulse width modulation, but they seem to work fine. If you have a DeFalco, probably the most popular controller on the market in 30-second scale, then you'll have no problem. So that's my overview of the Velocity brushless motor kit. I hope to get the car to the track in a day or two and see how it actually runs. But I've heard some good things from people that have already used this kit. As always, thanks for watching NorCal Slot Car Scene, and we'll see you at the racetrack.